What if I told you that herpes isn't the thing that's been holding you back? It isn't what's stopping you from finding love, beautiful or meaningful relationships, or creating the life that you want to live. What's been shaping everything since then is the story you started telling yourself after the diagnosis and the choices you've been making because of it. And at some point, everyone reaches a moment where they decide whether they're going to keep putting their life on hold or start living it again. And the fact that you're tuning into this episode tells me something. It tells me you're ready. Ready for the moment where you stop letting your diagnosis control your life and start choosing who you become and the life you want to build moving forward. Hi, I'm Dupree, and I help people to navigate life with herpes. And today's episode is the final one in the Shift Your Mindset About Herpes series. This episode isn't about learning something new. It's about pulling everything together we've talked about thus far. Your thoughts, your patterns, and the limiting beliefs you formed after your diagnosis. Because for a lot of people, the hardest part of having herpes really isn't the virus itself. It's what you start believing after you get the news. And if you've been listening to this series, you already know that nothing actually changes until your story about it does. For a lot of people, the shift after herpes diagnosis isn't obvious. It's subtle. Your life doesn't just fall apart overnight. It actually starts to slow down over time. You pause, you pull back, and you become more careful. And I want to be really clear about something. That slowdown isn't random. It happened because you were trying to protect your heart, your confidence, and your sense of safety, which makes total sense. But protecting yourself is only meant to be temporary. And if you don't consciously move out of that place, it slowly becomes your default. It starts limiting you instead of supporting you, and it begins influencing the choices you make moving forward. Throughout this series, we've talked about your thoughts, how your mind rinses and repeats them, and how they start to feel true simply because they've been around for a long time. And just because a thought feels familiar doesn't mean it reflects who you are. Maybe you've been cautious up until this point, but it doesn't mean that's who you are now or where you're meant to stay. So this is where things start to come together, because once you realize your thoughts aren't facts, you're no longer reacting to them and you're no longer stuck living inside the same patterns just because they're familiar. This is the point where you take back ownership. What do I mean by this? Well, taking ownership of your life again doesn't mean judging yourself, and it doesn't mean waiting until fear is gone or for confidence to magically appear. What it does mean, though, is that you get a say in how much influence your diagnosis has over your choices, a say in how open your life feels, and a say in how you move forward from here. Ownership isn't about proving anything. It's about deciding that you're ready to engage with your life again. And that's where empowerment begins. Once you take ownership back, something important happens. You stop waiting for the perfect moment, you stop waiting to feel ready, and you stop measuring your life by how safe it feels to stay exactly where you are. Instead, you start asking yourself this one simple question. What do I want my life to look like? Because ownership isn't just an internal decision. It shows up in the choices you make, how you choose relationships, how you choose connection, and how you choose to show up in your own life. Throughout this series, we've talked about fear, how it shows up after your diagnosis, and how it tries to convince you to play small, wait longer, or stay quiet. But fear doesn't mean putting your life on hold. It means paying attention to what's driving it. And once you understand that and you overcome that fear, you stop letting it decide everything for you. Choosing differently doesn't mean forcing yourself into situations you're not ready for. It doesn't mean pushing past your limits or pretending things don't feel uncomfortable. It means listening to yourself instead of automatically backing away. It means asking yourself, is this a no because it's truly not what's right for me, or is it a no because I'm scared of what might happen? Recognizing the difference between the two is really important. Because when you start choosing from self-trust instead of fear, your life opens up in small but meaningful ways. At this point, here's what I want you to know. The past is the past. It already happened, and it's not something that you can change. You also don't need to understand every part of it, and you don't need to replay it over and over again. But what's important to understand is that it doesn't get to decide the direction you go from here. You do. This isn't about pretending that herpes didn't affect you. It's about stopping it from being the reference point for every decision you make. For a lot of people, it's not just fear that holds them back. It's shame, embarrassment, and the quiet belief that they now need someone else's approval to feel worthy again. It shows up as needing reassurance before you trust yourself, needing validation before you take a step, or needing someone else to confirm that you're still desirable, still lovable, and still enough. But the fact is that your worth is not up for debate or negotiation, and it's not something another person gets to decide. This is the point where you stop outsourcing your value, stop waiting for someone else's reaction to tell you who you are, and you stop holding your life back just to avoid discomfort or rejection. It means you choose experiences, relationships, and opportunities based on who you are now, not who you were when fear was in control, and not who you were when shame had a hold on you. It means trusting yourself to handle whatever comes up instead of trying to control every outcome ahead of time. You don't need permission to live fully again. You don't need everyone to understand you or to like you, and you don't need a guarantee before you move forward. You get to decide what you allow to shape your life from here on out. And when you make that decision, things start aligning around it. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you're no longer living from a place of fear, shame, or needing to prove your worth. You're living from the choice that herpes no longer gets to decide who you are. And that's what it means to write your own story. So, here are a few ways that you can begin rewriting your story from a place of ownership instead of reaction and fear. First, pay attention to the story you're telling yourself, and more importantly, the meaning you've attached to it. Because after a diagnosis, a lot of people start turning stories into facts without even realizing it. Stories like, I need to be realistic now. I should just be grateful that someone accepts me. People like me don't get to want more than this version of life now. When you notice those thoughts, pause and ask yourself, is this actually true, or is this just a story I'm creating? Because stories don't have to be obvious to shape your life. They do it quietly through choices you make and the ones you talk yourself out of. And once you start seeing the story for what it is, you get to decide whether it still belongs in your life. Second, practice choosing what you want before you worry about how. You don't need to know how it's going to happen. All that matters is being honest about what you want without immediately shutting yourself down or talking yourself out of it because you think it's not possible. Because the moment you name what you want and truly believe it can happen, something shifts. Your choices start coming from a different place. You notice different opportunities, you respond differently, and over time, your life starts moving in a new direction. You'll start finding connection, love, fulfillment, and a bigger life than the one you've been settling for. Wanting more is the moment you start choosing differently, and you're allowed to want more, and you deserve it too. Third, choose how you see yourself before you look for confirmation. Because if you wait for someone else's reaction to decide how you feel about yourself, you'll always be waiting. After a diagnosis, a lot of people start looking outside themselves for reassurance. They look for approval. They look for signs that they're still lovable, still desirable, and still enough. But your worth was never something another person gets to decide. Start choosing thoughts that support you instead of keeping yourself small. Not because you fully believe them yet, but because you're willing to practice seeing yourself differently. And finally, everything comes down to what you choose in this moment. Not yesterday, not 10 years from now, but right now. To quote Eckhart Tolle, realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have. Because let's face it, life isn't happening somewhere down the road or somewhere in the past. It's happening right here and now. And every decision you make in this moment is coming from one of two places: faith or fear. Fear says to play it safe, don't ask for too much, or don't risk people finding out about your condition. Faith says trust yourself. Take the step and show up as yourself, unapologetically. So here's what I want to leave you with. This entire series has been about healing from the inside out. Letting go of the beliefs you picked up after your diagnosis that told you to play small, expect less for yourself, or to put your life on hold. It's also been about remembering that you still get to choose the life you want to live. Not once, not someday, but every day. Fear may still show up, but it no longer gets to run your life because you're deciding how much influence it has. Every day, you're making choices, not just big ones, but small ones too. What you tell yourself when you wake up, what you believe is possible for you, and what you talk yourself out of before you even try. Those choices make all the difference. So before we end this episode and this series, I'll leave you with this one question. What are you going to choose? Faith or fear? Because herpes may be a part of your story, but it doesn't have to write the ending. Well, that's all I have for today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and this series. If you haven't subscribed yet, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on audio, be sure to do that so you don't miss future episodes. Also, if you're tired of navigating your condition alone, come and join us at Herpes Wellness. Membership gives you access to a private online community with forums, chat rooms, and monthly live streams where you can ask questions, make friends, find love, and get support from people who truly get what you're going through. Also, if you want support on the go, then you can download the Herpes Wellness app, available in the App Store and in Google Play. The links to our website and the app are in the description. And if you're concerned about privacy, we've got you totally covered. The app icon and push notifications say Age Wellness, so if someone happens to see your screen, you won't disclose your status unintentionally. And if you're enjoying this podcast, or if you have something you'd like to share, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you the next time on the Herpes Wellness Podcast. Bye for now.